All right, YouTube. Welcome back. Wanted to do another video here. I wanted to react to Kyle Davidson's comments following development camp, or in the midst of development camp, I guess I should say. But um, another Kyle Davidson media availability where he talks a little bit about free agency as well as development camp, like I was saying there. But um, anyway, I guess without further ado, I'll get right into it. I do want to say at the start of the video here, if you like what I'm doing here, you want to keep up with what I'm doing, by all means, man. Subscribe, throw me a like for that matter. That'd be great. But yeah, we'll get into it here. We'll start out with Kyle talking about free agency, I think he starts with.
Are you planning to do anything else?
It doesn't feel like we're going to do anything else today. Continue to explore more so depth options right now. Just feels like where the market's at this time in terms of free agency. Like goalie, basically every position. Probably look for some help in net in Rockford, some forwards, and exploring some defense options as well. So, but no, I don't think there's anything going to be happening today.
Is it a particularly tough market to make moves this time around?
It definitely was. Even like whether it be free agency or trade, it just felt like it was pretty stagnant. Just kind of stalled. I don't know if that'll lend itself to more of a drawn out market over the course of the summer, as just maybe things are more staged than they have been in the past, where it felt much more kind of immediate around the draft and free agency. A lot more movement maybe happened, but we'll kind of see how that plays out. But as we sit here now, I feel pretty happy about the obviously the veterans we've got, but also just the opportunity for competition amongst our young players that we'll have. If things were to stay the same, of course, we're going to continue to explore options out there, and in terms of the NHL team, it's probably more so, trade options. I don't know how much will be available to us, but it's always something we're exploring and looking into. So, but feels like we're in a pretty good spot, including, trading for Sam this morning, who we know quite well and understand his versatility and what he brings to a lineup, and what his strengths are, and how he can help out the bottom part of our lineup. So happy to bring him back and bring another kind of veteran that we understand back into the fold. And so we'll kind of see how the rest of the week or the summer plays out. Still a long time before training camp, and we've got some of our own restricted guys to get done as well. So we'll work on that and continue to evaluate the market.
What are your expectations?
Okay, first up, quickly, calls out Sam Lafferty as somebody that's gonna help the bottom of the lineup. Dust is settled on the free agency since this video came out, and in the time that it's taken for me to record this. But I think the question still remains, and I'll point it out here. I don't know who the hell is at the top of the lineup, but we'll let it keep going for now.
And that way you've come so a nice time sort of qualified, but with Brossois, and I mean, if you potentially play in Rockford or someone of those guys play in Rockford, what with having, I guess, any update on Brossois too?
Yeah, not a ton. I honestly, not because there isn't one, just I haven't really pushed all that hard yet. I think we know that we're going to bring back Sodi. We qualified him. We're trying to get a deal done there. No reason to believe why we wouldn't get something done with Arvid. I think it's, again, if we have numbers and hopefully LB's healthy and ready to go in training camp, we can have a competition there and see where that goes. But I think we'll still look to solidify things down in Rockford, and a couple different ways you can go with it, whether you go more of a prospect type or veteran with Drew. We'll kind of figure that out, but I think Drew's done enough and has enough body of work that we can trust him to carry the mail down there and really take the net and run with it and take on a really good workload to further his development. So I feel very confident and happy with our goaltending situation right now. obviously Spencer coming in and continuing to understand our system and under new coaching staff, some new defensive systems that he'll be playing within. And so I think that'll be great for him, continue to get comfortable here. Arvid, I think we can build on his season last year. And then, I think Drew is trending in a really good direction, and then we'll see how LB is and then what else we do in Rockford, over the next little while. So I feel very happy and confident with where the goaltending situation's at.
All right. So first time I'm going to stop Kyle, and I might go on for a little bit here. Try to keep it relatively brief, but first things first, I do want to point out Kyle calls out just confidence in where the goalies are at. Couldn't agree more, honestly. I think I don't really know exactly how goalies are going to shake out, honestly. And I guess that kind of bleeds into what Kyle's saying. Real quick, let me go back to Kyle. What a face here. But anyway, bleeds into what Kyle's saying with Arvid and Laurent Brossoit and Spencer Knight. And, I think I don't really see a world where Spencer Knight doesn't get the majority of the playing time in Chicago. I guess maybe we end up seeing a bit of a like a split, a little bit of a 1A, 1B situation between Spencer Knight and someone. But I don't know. I think it's a little bit unclear as to exactly how things are going to shake up. And the other thing that Kyle touches on in the his time here is he's talking about, I think as he put it, letting Drew carry the mail in Rockford, but giving like a sizable part of the workload to Comesso down in Rockford, which is ideal. Don't get me wrong, but we've got 3 NHL caliber goalies. Hard to imagine any of them going down to Rockford, and therefore hard to imagine who ends up as the backup in Rockford. And that doesn't really matter too much, but I guess the main point is still, though, we've got these 3 NHL caliber goalies, and I guess an interesting development since this video was released by the Blackhawks and since Kyle met with the media is Arvid Soderblom has filed for contract arbitration since. And I know Kyle calls out there's no reason to think that we can't get a deal done. Not me. They can't get a deal done with Arvid. And I mean, arbitration leads to a contract anyway, but just, interesting to point out kind of it's always a weird dynamic whenever a contract goes to arbitration, especially with goalies. Maybe not especially, but thinking back to recent memory, if anyone keeps up with the league in general, Jeremy Swayman and the Boston Bruins went to a very ugly, contract arbitration just a couple years ago, I think that was. And I don't know, man. I think Arvid, coming off of a great season, had a pretty tough season 2 years ago. I don't know. It's weird for me to be comfortable with the idea of him going to arbitration. Weird for me to kind of know what to expect following that. And you can't imagine, to go back to my point about who backs up in Rockford, who plays where in general. I guess that's more so the question. But yeah, it's going to be really weird to see how all this shakes out. I guess that's really all that I'm trying to say here. Hopefully, in an ideal world, we end up with Laurent Brossoit exceeding even what's expected of him. It feels like an eternity since Laurent Brossoit has played, but he was always more than a capable backup in Winnipeg. Last time that I remember him really standing out, at least, was in Winnipeg. And could be a really valuable trade chip for the Blackhawks should he become healthy at some point, which who knows, honestly, if that's going to happen. Hopefully it does for his sake, if no one else. But yeah, again, just interesting to see how it shakes out. But anyway, that's a whole lot said about not much, but I'll keep going.
The quiet free agency today, is that a combination of the thin market but also wanting to have those spots available for the younger players to just take on roles?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's a combination of feeling confident that our young players are ready. We do have enough of them that there will be a competition there. They're not all going to jump in, but we do think that a number of them can run and grab spots. combined with some of the veterans we've got already in the system, trading for Burakovsky. I think Lafferty was more so, I think a reaction to the market where we can get someone we know, a little shorter term, a little more flexibility there. And then, just, didn't want to put any players in front of some of the young guys that we do think are ready. Now we have enough young players that there aren't enough spots for all of them to play, so there will be battles there, and they'll keep each other accountable, keep each other honest on earning spots here in the NHL. But we do feel that a couple of them are ready to really take a role and run with it and be a positive impact on the team. So it's a little bit of combination of everything you mentioned: market, situation, players being ready, veterans already in place. And so it was that's probably, it all goes into the mix on why it's a little quieter today.
You've got a fairly deep list of RFAs next year. Have you started to have conversations with whether Bedard, Nazar, Spencer Knight, or whomever else?
Yeah, we have had some conversations with a couple of those players. Nothing imminent. I think there's the new salary cap marketplace, I think, is going to stall some of that. It's going to make some of these a little more drawn out than maybe they would have been in the past on a more flat cap. But we've started, and we'll see if something gets done. Again, it's a kind of a new world that we've walked into this summer with the cap and where it's going, and new CBA, lots of unanswered questions, I think, still just systematically within the NHL that we're trying to navigate, which, these things are difficult to get done at the best of times, but then when you toss in a little uncertainty with how some of these structure rules, anything like that, how that can impact things, is just, I think it'll delay things a little bit, but happy with how conversations have gone so far.
There's been a lot of talk about.
All right, stopping again. As I've been doing in these videos, just kind of share my observations. I don't really have necessarily much to add to what Kyle says in, not as an insider or anything like that. But anyway, we hear Kyle alluding to like the CBA and cap changes here. I can't honestly remember if any of the CBA changes had been made or like officially announced. I guess, frankly, I'm not even positive if they've been officially announced at this point anyway, but we've seen some of it leak. If you aren't familiar with the leaks about the CBA changes, the big ones that are part of what Kyle's talking about is players being able to sign for a maximum of 7 years if they're re-signing with the team that already holds their rights, and a maximum of 6 years if they go to the market. Currently, it would be 8 years with your current team, 7 years if you hit the market. And moreover, especially for these young players that the Blackhawks are having to deal with, pardon the phrasing there, they don't really have to deal with them, but the young players on the Blackhawks here that are due for new contracts, Frank, Connor specifically, tough position for them to be in as players in a world where the cap is increasing as much as it's expected to over the next 3 years, as much as it's guaranteed to over the next 3 years, let alone how much it's expected to beyond that. Hard to know what the right thing to do is. Obviously, any NHL team is going to want to lock up their young stars as early as possible, but player and agent, more so agent, I guess, wants to encourage the player to maximize their profits, and with the cap going up as much as it is, it's a new thing to navigate, as Kyle's saying in this as well. It's a new thing for everyone involved, and he's kind of just saying pretty directly, honestly, that contract negotiations should be expected to take a little bit longer, thusly, and I think that's fair. And moreover, as a fan, I love to hear this because I think that it's really cool to get insight to the business parts, or the business side of the game, I should say. So I think that's fascinating to get. And moreover, I think, again, as a fan, I think maybe it helps kind of keep the faith of not getting your expectations super high that Connor or Frank are going to sign on this offseason at all. You know, it would be wise of them, in all likelihood, at least, it would be wise of them to bet on themselves this year, see what the upcoming season brings for them, and kind of push their chips in, so to speak. And like I was saying before, make as much money as possible. So again, uh, appreciate what Kyle's doing here as a fan. Appreciate the insight. Appreciate the kind of telling us not to panic without saying so. But as a business person, as a person in business, this feels a little bit like a calculated gamble is what I've settled on here. Um, I don't I don't know if it feels very intuitive to kind of show your hand as much as Kyle is here by kind of giving up um this insight about, hey, this might take a little bit longer, because um it almost feels like he's encouraging the player not to sign to some bit. And um stick with me, let me kind of flesh this idea out a little bit. But anyway, I don't want to claim to be the most politically savvy person as it relates to business. But again, I do work in business. I work in a corporate setting, and I know how people sometimes will think of ways to try to um, get leverage in a setting like this when you're making negotiations, right? And again, I know I'm not the only person in the world to have these experience in this field. But anyway, like I was saying before, agents, players, always listening, and you have to know that they're hearing what Kyle's saying here. And like I was saying before, Kyle's almost kind of ceding control of the negotiation to the agent and player pair, as he kind of, like I was saying before, encourages them to feel out the next year and try to understand what their best action will be. He's, encouraging them to wait to put their best foot forward almost, right? So, not a bad thing to do. I want to be clear. I'm not like knocking Kyle for this. And again, I don't claim to be the most savvy person, but a savvy negotiator would know that building rapport with the other party, and obviously they already have a history of rapport, players are already with the team and they've known each other for a very long time, but I digress. Building rapport and some level of trust is a huge tool to be able to leverage in a negotiation. So encouraging the players camp to do its best for them in and of itself is not a bad thing. And moreover, can be a really good tool in negotiating, in the long run. So, all that said, there's risk, I think, to being as open as Kyle's being here. Risk of not pushing to lock those two players up as early as they possibly can. But at the same time, in all honesty, if I'm in Kyle's shoes, I'm leveraging relationships as well, just like I think this is kind of playing into, like I'm saying. Um, so yeah, I think leveraging relationships is a skill of Kyle's that we have seen pay off in spades, dividends. I don't know. It's treated him and us very well. His ability to leverage relationships. See Alex Vlasic, and honestly, Ryan Donato contract has already aged really well after Trent Frederick signed too. So yeah, again, I'm not knocking Kyle here, but just an interesting tidbit. Again, something that stood out to me as kind of fascinating on two tiers. So yeah, my thoughts there. But back to it with Kyle.
Needing to get a player to help you on regard. Where do you feel like that type of player can come from? Is it internal or from outside the organization?
Well, you're always looking for that type of player. You're always looking for good players, in the marketplace. They just come up very seldomly, and when you do, you act aggressively. And I feel we've reacted accordingly. Again, doesn't always work out, and so you move on. But having said that, if we look internally, I think there's a number of players that are coming that can fill those roles. That doesn't mean you don't proactively look out in the marketplace. It's just they're so few and far between when they are available. But so you have to be very aggressive when they do, and doesn't always work out that way. But I think the most sure way of finding those players is developing them yourself, and so that's what we'll do until a new opportunity arises. So.
All right, quickly, I'll just stay picture in picture here, but glad someone asked the same question that I had at the top of this media availability. Who the heck is at the top of the lineup with Connor Bedard? And honestly, like, fair answer from Kyle. You know, there's nothing going for the Blackhawks in free agency, right? Like, rising cap. Might be a conversation for a different YouTube video, honestly, because I feel like I could go on and on about this. But the rising cap has really kind of sewered rebuilding teams, in my opinion, at least, or in my observation. It's been, there's so many opportunities that could have led a team like the Blackhawks to capitalize on, cap strapped teams that just are completely gone because of the rising cap here. So that sucks, and it is what it is. So again, fair enough answer from Kyle to say that the help coming to the top of the lineup, so to speak, is coming from within. And yeah, obviously that's the only thing that we can do at this point. But anyway, that's the only thing that the Blackhawks can do at this point, is lean on the prospects that they're developing. But the fear still remains that the Blackhawks fan base was very vocal about. There's still nobody to play with Connor Bedard. There's still a lot of fear that him not having anyone to play with, reasonably at least, nobody on his level. There's still a fear that that's going to stunt his development, and obviously we've heard a lot of things about him putting in a lot of work. Connor, that is, putting in a lot of work in the offseason and looking great. I think it was Frank Saravalli said that he already looks like he's poised to take a major step, and I mean that's great, but and hopefully it pans out, moreover. But again, just, I know large part of the Blackhawks fan base still has that kind of underlying fear. So anywho, again, glad they're coming from within. They have to come within, clearly, but just, where are they first and foremost? Like, are they, the Anton Frondels of the world, who we know is likely going back to Sweden, and kind of similarly, how far out are they? But anyway, keep going with Kyle here, and we will come back in, I think it's just a couple minutes here.
Jack
My
Burton
next
just
pause.
told us he's decommitted from Boston University. He's going to stick with Kitchener. How much clarity do you have on kind of what the contract guidelines will be and what the framework between CHL and NCAA and what that looks like moving forward with prospects?
Yeah, we don't have a ton right now. Once we get that, I think there's still some steps that have to occur before we get, a more tangible document, guidelines and path forward on that kind of thing. So we don't have too much. We're kind of in hand in glove with Jack and his process and what he's been going through the last little while in terms of making a decision where he wants to play next year. My position on those is I like to allow our prospects to own their development path. I think that's when there's ownership in a location or in a situation that's decided on, by the player with input from all the different, inputs that they want to have in their decision-making process, us included. I think when the player decides, that's when they're most invested in their development situation, rather than us saying, go here, and then their heart's not really in it. And, I'd rather them be owning their own career and own development in terms of where they're playing. And I think Jack was quite thorough in his process and ending up with where he ended up. And so we're fully supportive of that and excited for, what's to come and, how that, how we navigate what rights and contract will, it's a discussion for another day, but no concerns at all on his path forward.
All right, quick stop again, just to say, like, this is the, in my opinion, this is the right way to do this. Specifically, sorry, Kyle calling out that the Blackhawks like to let the prospects own their development path. This is perfect. I could not agree more with this. And frankly, when these conversations about Kyle Davidson not being a good general manager start to come up, it's things like this that really kind of get me going in a negative way, because organizational leadership this is what you need to do. You need to cultivate buy-in. You need to allow these guys to feel like they have control over what they're doing. It's so important to go back to that, what I was saying about negotiating and building rapport and leveraging relationships. Allowing these guys to see that the organization trusts them to do what's best for them and allow them to feel autonomous, not just a cog in the Blackhawks machine, so to speak. Like, you need that. And that might sound super obvious, but I see so many teams. I think we all see so many teams just telling their prospects what to do. And that's not an inherently bad thing either, but in my opinion, allowing players to have that autonomy, allowing them to feel like a human being, allowing them to feel trusted, like I was saying before, like, goes a really long way to building culture. And I won't go into the whole history here, but if the Blackhawks need to improve one thing as a franchise historically, it's their culture still. That's still something that needs to drastically improve from years past. So anyway, love hearing this from Kyle. This is my shit, honestly. So love that. It's honestly what has stuck out with or has stuck with me since the first time I watched this video more than anything is the trust that they've put in Jack Purdom here to do what's best for him, and moreover that philosophy as it applies to the rest of the players. So anyway, keep going with Kyle, and I'll have a couple quick comments here and there, but nothing crazy for a while, I think.
Are you surprised that Sasha decided to transfer from North Dakota to Boston University?
I don't know. Whenever I'm not really surprised with that. It just seems more commonplace nowadays. And then they had a coaching changeover. So when normally when you commit to a program, it's a lot of it has to do with a head coach and a certain situation and discussions that take place. And then when you remove that, I guess that throws uncertainty in the situation. So not all that, shocked by it or anything. And certainly, again, no cause for concern. We think BU is a great program, and we've had great success with our prospects there. And so I think he landed in a good spot. North Dakota is also a great spot. So, I think it would have been a good situation whether he stayed or he ended up in BU. So it's all good on our end.
Nothing much to say here. Just a cool little insight to the life of an NCAA player from Kyle here. And I'm not going to put it up in this video, but I do know that Sasha Boisvert met with the U media as well during development camp. He provided a little bit more insight to this. I think it's the same point that Kyle hits of there was a long-standing relationship with that coach, and when the coach goes, honestly kind of playing into what I was just saying about, culture and trust and things like that, Boisvert's relationship with Nodak doesn't maintain the level of trust that he had kind of built up since, I think, 14 is what he said in his media availability. He'd been being recruited by this coach since he was 14 years old. Coach is gone. All of a sudden, there's a lack of, buy-in to the program, right? So something so small can make such a big difference, and I think that's why it's so important for the Blackhawks to be very intentional about, over a long period of time, allowing them to see that the organization, not just a coach, in this case, the organization trusts the players here. So anyway, I'll keep it going.
And could you run through just like the qualifiers, why you decided not to qualify Khrushchev and why you decided to qualify the three that you did?
I think Arvid had a nice bounce back season. I think we've seen some nice progression from him and commitment to his craft after a tough year 2 years ago. Bounced back, put in a lot of work, showed some nice progress, and wanted to continue that progress and that relationship moving forward with Arvid. So that was the basis for that decision. Then Wyatt and Louis, they're still young players earlier in their career where we see promise and very viable path to meaningful NHL roles this year. So we wanted to keep them around. Phil, Khrushchev, had a little bit of a tough year, and just the probably, a lack of defined role with us moving forward, as well as a little bit of a question on where that potential ARB could have come out. I think it was probably better for all that, he kind of finds a new path and new opportunity somewhere else to continue to grow in his NHL career. And then the other players, just, kind of business decisions, we're going to look to fill those spots with some different players.
All right, I don't have too much to add here with regard to RFAs either. Kurashev was terrible. This is the right choice to move on from Kurashev. That said, I wouldn't be totally shocked if Kurashev kind of finds new life with a new organization, honestly. But it just, after this past season, what is the point? One thing that's interesting that I actually didn't notice first time I listened through this, but really quickly Kyle calls out there that more or less probably wasn't worth it to go through arbitration, and where arbitration would have fallen for Kurashev, I think is the words that Kyle used pretty closely to that, at least. Wouldn't have really been worth it for the Blackhawks. Interesting insight. Another little bit of like showing his hand from Kyle here again, like I was calling out towards the top of the video. Arvid Soderblom has since filed for arbitration himself. Based on what Kyle just said about Kurashev, Blackhawks can't be too worried about where arbitration will land. Soderblom either. Clearly something that they had considered for their RFAs. So interesting little insight, but again, keep it running here.
You mentioned the RFAs and specifically with Connor. Has he made any indication to you as far as he'd like to get something done sooner rather than later, or is he fine just, taking the time that's necessary and however long it takes here with
Yeah, like I probably don't want to get too far into it, but we are talking, and so I think that's an indicator of an openness to discuss, and I think he made his thoughts very clear at the end of the season, and then subsequently in interviews about he's committed to Chicago and wants to be here long term, and we obviously want him here long term. So there's mutual agreement there, obviously, and so we'll see. But if we're able to get something done, that would be fantastic. But if we don't, I think it's probably more so out of the uncertainty around how the league and the system is going to be growing or impacted moving forward than anything, player and team related. So,
okay, another quick comment before I let Kyle keep going. Just interesting though, he verbatim doesn't want to go too far into it regarding Connor's contract. Just love to see the balance here, honestly. Like, last time that there was a question about RFAs, the question earlier that I paused for when he's talking about Frank and Connor here, he gave so much, talked at length during that answer, right? And I said my piece about it, but I also said there's an intention behind that, seemingly to leverage relationships, to give in this setting. Again, with intention. And I think that you can see the way that Kyle approaches this question, in my opinion at least, you can see that was an intentional move to give that leverage to the agents in the first question there, because he's being very careful and calculated in this one. So it's not that Kyle just like kind of came to mind that there are CBA changes when he was asked this question. He clearly entered in this into this media availability with the goal of making that statement. He doubles down on it in this question too, of like, you have to learn how to navigate the CBA changes and the cap going up. So just clearly intentional. Again, personally, I think that's a good play. I think that's good of Kyle to build those relationships and encourage the players to do what's best for them. So just want to highlight that intentionality here, but we'll keep going.
Offseason is done. I guess where do you see the rebuild being after another draft class and these signings and projecting prospects and that type of place, and I guess year 4 going into how do you clear your picture?
Yeah, I think we're heading into a new stage where we're starting to see, and we're leaving open spots in the NHL for some of these young players that we have drafted and have developed to enter the NHL and start making up a larger or large, depending on the point of the year, portion of the roster. And so I think we're we're seeing them graduate. We've seen some of them graduate to pro. Now we're going to see some of them graduate into the NHL and NHL full time. And so I think that's a meaningful step from not having any of them here, or just a very small subset of our drafted prospects here over the last couple of years, to where we're starting to see them almost take over this team a little bit and take over that locker room to some extent. We still have a veteran-laden roster, but there are there's going to be a much larger contingent of young players that could be here for a very long time, breaking camp with us this year. And so I think that's really exciting. I think that's a display of progress on where we've been in the past. It's a different look for this team, and I think it's an eye to where we're headed. And I think it's just an exciting step that we've taken that we haven't necessarily been able to reasonably expect prior to this season.
All right. Interesting part of the video to me, because this is so different than last offseason. But anyway, Kyle here calls out, we're heading into a new stage of the rebuild. And he obviously is focusing entirely on that in this answer, right? He's entirely focused on, we have these new guys coming in, we haven't been able to see these new guys yet, like all of that, right? If we could all just take a second to rewind to last offseason, when Kyle proclaimed that finishing at the bottom of the league was going to be unacceptable again, that we need to take a step forward here as an organization, we're in a totally different spot as far as how this answer is approached, right? Like, if Kyle still felt that same way, this is the time to say it, right? This is the time to say we need to take a step forward. And he has done a complete 180 with his approach to a question like this. But ironically, the team's at the exact same spot, right? Like, so interesting again to me. But again, team's not any better. Honestly, you could argue that the team is worse with no Seth Jones in the lineup. And I won't lie, I personally fall in the category of Seth Jones was poisoning the locker room, that camp. If you follow me on Twitter, you've probably seen my celebration of Seth Jones getting traded. But anyway, you could make the argument on paper, team is probably worse heading into this season than it was last season with no Seth Jones. So, yeah, maybe not probably, but again, you could make the argument. I'm not going to make that argument. But anyway, again, all of a sudden, though, Kyle Davidson, totally different guy, totally different answer about the team's position in the rebuild here, the status of the team. And I think Kyle's learned this. I've heard a lot of people say it, but Kyle never should have made that proclamation last season and like demanded that the team takes a step. Like, honestly, in my opinion, all he did was force these impatient fans out of their shells to demand success even more than they were beforehand. And it did nothing to benefit anyone, right? Like, it's just been so obnoxious to now hear all these guys pissing and moaning about, the Blackhawks not getting Marner or Ehlers or whoever in this offseason. And obviously, hands are tied in a lot of ways for the Blackhawks. But those people that drive that narrative, that demand improvement year over year and call Kyle Davidson a terrible GM because the team is terrible, like, all he did was add fuel to their fire by demanding the team takes a step. So just a terrible move. I'll move on. I'll digress. But this should have always been the approach, right? And like, I guess you can't say this over and over and over again. But again, I don't know what the benefit of demanding the teams take a step forward was. So, anyway, kind of to tie a couple thoughts together here. To me, this feels in line with how Kyle's negotiating contracts. in that there's a sense that he's negotiating with the fans here, in my opinion. He's not making a promise, unlike last year. He's not setting an expectation at all, other than, I guess, the expectation you could argue is that we will see young players, but for better or worse, and I think all of us should be hoping and praying that this doesn't come back to bite Kyle, but for better or worse, he has forced the hand of the team at this point. Young players are going to have to play. We don't have enough veterans in the lineup to not play the youth, right? And that should be fine, in my opinion, at least. I think there's a lot of guys who are NHL ready, especially in like a bottom six capacity. Ryan Green, Aiden Thompson, well, maybe not Aiden Thompson, but Ryan Green, Oliver Moore. You can make an argument for Oliver Moore to start in the AHL, whatever. Colton Dock, though, maybe Sam Savoie, maybe Landon Slaggert, though. Landon Slaggert's contract, I think, is one way starting this year for that matter as well, so he's not going anywhere. But anyway, just a handful of guys that should be in the NHL, in my opinion. Anyway, so yeah, again, he's forced the hand of the team, so there is that expectation that the young guys are going to play. But as far as like standings, like, I mean, bro's practically saying like, just kind of low key expect to be in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, right? Like, there's no talk about taking a step forward. There's entering a new stage of the rebuild, but he calls it a new stage of the rebuild. We're still in this, dude. Like, there's no secrets about it. There's no false expectations being built like there were last season. But again, yeah, so he's diverting our attention away from the standings, or at least he's trying to. And honestly, like, I hope this isn't reactionary from the Blackhawks, from Kyle for that matter, but this feels like he wants the 25-26 Blackhawks to feel like the 24-25 San Jose Sharks, which I would argue is the right move. I think the team has to be bad still. There's, everybody, rising tide rose all ships this offseason, with the exception of maybe Nashville, most definitely Pittsburgh. But everybody got better except for Blackhawks, the Sharks, again, the Preds, I'll say. Depends. Like, solid grouping at the bottom from this past season. There's no reason to think they're going to be any better next year. So anyway, I'm rambling, but again, I think this is the right move. I think we should be prepared for the Blackhawks to be bad. I think we should be prepared to be excited about the fact that young guys are in the lineup, and the wins probably aren't going to come, honestly. We hope they do. That'd be great. But it's definitely not what we should be banking on. So yeah, hopefully a more fun team than last season, but not going to be full of wins. Not going to be a season full of wins.
Question, but what did you see from John Luster at Providence this year?
Yeah, he had a really good season for a freshman. I think he was. We've made so many picks lately, and so many picks high in the first round, that some of these players don't necessarily get the shine that they deserve. And I think John's one of those guys that he probably should get a little more love than he's getting. Putting up the points that he did and having the season that he did in Hockey East, which is a really good league within the NCAA. That's a really impressive season for a freshman at his age, and stepping right out of the USHL into the NCAA, and in a program like Providence to put up the points he did was really impressive, really exciting for us. And again, him and a number of the other guys from the last draft class, when they walk in for our opening meeting there at development camp, you can just see they're bigger, they're stronger, and you can see why he probably did acclimate to college hockey as quickly as he did. He was physically ready to do it, and obviously he's got some pace and some game to his profile. And so, no, it was a really exciting year for him and for us, and just another player we're really excited about.
There it is. That's the end. A quick shout out. I don't know if the audio picked up when I was recording, but love that the guy called out kind of a random question about John Mustard. But love to hear it, dude. Shout out to my boy Johnny Mustard for getting a little bit of love from Kyle. But anyway, kind of finalize my thoughts here. Once again, crazy length on a video here. But anyway, main takeaway from here, for me at least, is Kyle's shift in demeanor from last offseason, like I was just kind of going on about. But he really is exuding this air of, we can't really move up the standings right now, but it's okay. And I've said before that, you know, my read on Kyle might be off. That's always possible. But genuinely, to me, this feels like a guy who took an L last offseason by making these declarations of improvement for the, you know, upcoming season. And when the reality was that there weren't the tools weren't there, I should say, pardon me, to take a step forward. And this year, I'd argue that the tools are there, or at least they might be, with these young guys taking a step. I mean, these young guys taking a step. You know, there's a genuine impact for those guys to be impact players. But even still, Kyle's not making any demands here. He's not setting any expectations, like I said before. So, yeah, even if we do get better, though, like I was just saying, who isn't getting better this season, right? Who didn't get better other than, again, the Penguins and the Preds, maybe anomaly team, but whatever. Or not anomaly, but they're weird. Hard to know what to make of them after this past season. So anyway, so yeah, everybody's trying to get better. Hopefully the Blackhawks do, but even if they do, I don't know how they get out of the basement. And again, I'm glad to kind of hear that Kyle's not demanding that they do get out of the basement, just because it feels unrealistic. And I don't know about all of you, but having that expectation in mind made it a whole lot harder to watch the Blackhawks lose last year. That's just me, maybe, but that's definitely how I felt last season. I can get down with more losing for now. I think that, you know, realistically that makes sense. And great draft upcoming next year. Hopefully we can get something that'll actually start to move the needle between that and next year's free agency. But honestly, after this year's free agency, hard to imagine anything actually happening. But anyway, again, that's the impression that Kyle's giving me, that, you know, don't get your hopes up too high. So we'll see where it goes. But again, if you are still here 47 minutes in, a little better than last time, a little better, not a whole hour reacting to a 15-minute video. But if you're still here, definitely give me a like on the video. Appreciate you sticking this through. And again, subscribe if you want to continue to see more of this. I want to do this more often, honestly. Not entirely sure what I will kind of talk about. Obviously, we're in off-season mode here, but I'll probably continue to react to some press conferences. At some point in the near future, I want to start looking at some game tape for prospects in the upcoming draft, like I was just talking about. I think that would be really engaging, especially knowing that this team's probably going to be pretty terrible again this year. But anyway, yeah, let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on Kyle's media availability. Let me know your thoughts on development camp if you've kept up with it. And moreover, let me know what you might want to see from me in the future. But for now, appreciate you and goodbye.